It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with Chief Conversationalist Thomas Senna. Featuring Matt Ardill. And special guest, Nicole Brady. And now, curator of the hall, JD.
It sort of just falls off a cliff there, doesn't it? JD. Oh, well. Hey, listen, it's a thrill to be here back in the SNL Hall of Fame. My name is JD, and welcome. Before you come inside, though, please do me a favor and wipe your feet. The SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair where each episode we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity in the hall. And that, my friend, is how we play the game. It's just that simple. So there's that. Listen, I will tell you that I'm pretty excited about today's show. It's a tremendous one. We are talking about Bob Odenkirk, and I am a big fan of his portrayal of Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad and as the titular character in Better Call Saul. But he's got a career that, spans decades, and we're going to break all that down. We're going to start first with our friend Matt Ardill, and then we are going to go downstairs to the conversation room with our friend Thomas, where he is sitting, waiting patiently, probably showing Nicole Brady some card tricks, I would imagine. So there's that. Before he was a star on Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad and Mr. Show, Bob Odenkirk spent some quality time in the SNL writing room, and our friend Matt Ardill has some information to share with us about Mr. Odenkirk. Matt, how are you doing?
JD, I'm good. I am excited. I'm a big Odenkirk fan. It filled the void when Kids in the Hall went off the air. Mr. Show was my poison of choice for sketch comedy for a while there. Lots of flannel. It was the 90s. So yeah, I'm really happy to be chatting about him.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Well, 5'9". Yeah, perfect. 5'9", born October 22nd, 1962. He was born in Berwyn, Illinois, before growing up in Naperville. He is the second oldest of 7 children. A studious kid. He graduated high school at 16 when he went on to college at DuPage before transferring to Marquette University in Milwaukee, and finally to Southern Illinois University, where he found his people. He became a radio DJ at his university and would experiment with sketch comedy, where he created his first sketch show, a radio sketch show called The Primetime Special. He was 3 credits shy of graduation before he moved to Chicago to study improv, and finished his final credits at Columbia University, receiving a degree in communications. This is where he met his collaborator, Robert Smigel, and studied with Chris Farley and Tim Meadows under the improv god Del Close.
Wow.
If you have a chance to check out Bob's biography or listen to the audiobook of it, his discussion of his meeting with Del Close and going to Del's apartment is epic. It's just very Del Close if you're a Del aficionado. Now, his influences include Monty Python, SCTV, Steve Martin, Woody Allen, and the comedy duo of Bob and Ray. An impressive resume. He has 43 writing credits, 134 acting credits, 28 producer credits, 21 director credits,
wow,
and 15 soundtrack credits. And he's not the only funny Odenkirk. His brother Bill wrote for The Simpsons.
I know that.
Yeah. No, for me, like I said, I got to love him on Mr. Show with Bob and David. Like I said, it filled that void when Kids in the Hall went off the air in 95. It ran from 95 to 98. Featured LA comedy greats, including, of course, David Cross, but also Scott Aukerman, Brian Posehn, Paul F. Tompkins, Tom Kenny, Mary Lynn, Reichsob, Jack Black, Sarah Silverman, and Karen Kilgariff, Scott Adsit, and many more.
It's a who's who.
It's a who's who, of literal who's who. Like, seeing young Jack Black do musical numbers is like wild. It's wild. The show played with the sketch comedy show format with banter between the cast, primarily Dave and Bob, in front of a live audience when they would then show the sketches to the audience, which were pre-recorded. They would often have to tone down the laughs because the audience enjoyed it so much it actually sounded like fake laughter. Now, the fact that this show was on in 1995, a decade before the Dave Chappelle Show was on the air, just sort of speaks to the claims that Dave invented the format when he shot Shade at Key and Peele. Maybe he should go back and look at his HBO brethren before making these claims. With all this success, this is actually something I found very shocking. He was on the brink of bankruptcy before landing the role as Saul Goodman.
Wow.
For all these credits, most of them before, many of them before, are Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. That's really the role that catapulted him to success. Now, he was originally considered for the role of Michael Scott in The Office, which would have been a very different energy. But that's also why he later came on in a cameo, playing a very Michael Scott character as the head of the Philadelphia branch. Now, his last name is German, meaning Church of Odin, so it's pretty metal. And he is scheduled to appear in 2025 in the revival of Glengarry Glen Ross with Kieran Culkin and Bill Burr on Broadway.
Oh my gosh, what a lineup that is.
That's going to be an interesting show. I'm definitely getting credits or tickets to that because I got to see that.
Yeah.
Now, last weird piece of trivia, I thought this would be a good one to go out on. He is actually descended from a German duke and is the 11th cousin of King Charles.
Gee whiz.
So he's literally comedy royalty. Yes. Literally comedy royalty.
Well, Hall of Fame royalty is our friend Thomas Senna, and we're going to go down to the conversation room with him right now to learn some more about our nominee this week, Bob Odenkirk. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, Jamie and Matt, thank you so much. And welcome to another edition, another conversation with a great panelist talking about an awesome, deserving writer this week. Bob Odenkirk is the nominee today on the SNL Hall of Fame. The famous, revived his career in the last 10 plus years, Bob Odenkirk. All the SNL geeks love to see that, and we love Bob, and we'll have a great time talking about him today. My guest here to talk all things Bob Odenkirk and SNL is our favorite news lady here on the SNL Hall of Fame, and my close personal friend. Thank you so much for coming back, Nicole Brady. How are you, Nicole?
I'm great. Excited to be back here. And thank you so much for having me again to talk about SNL. I'm so excited. It's going into its 50th season.
I know, right?
Amazing, right?
Yeah. So as a fan, for the 50th, do you have any expectations or any kind of special thing you might like to see during the 50th?
I mostly just want to know that they will never get rid of Kenan Thompson.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I want. I want him to be there forever. I love Kenan. I'm loving the cast. It's funny. We had talked last year, I think, the last time I was on the podcast, and you had the faith, I think, more than me about a lot of these newer cast members coming along, coming into their own. I've really enjoyed the last year. I think they're going to be really good this year with Maya Rudolph coming back as Kamala Harris. Love the political stuff they're doing. So I think it's great. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm pumped too. And so a couple days ago, they announced, as we're recording this, they announced 3 new cast members. I know I kind of get excited as an SNL fan. It's kind of like open up like 3 new presents to see how these new cast members are. How are your expectations like with new cast members on the show? How are those expectations been over the years?
Yeah, I mean it's always a little bit of a growing pains to see a new cast member come in. I feel like you want them to do well. That they are coming from the Groundlings or Second City or some great comedy, or they're on YouTube already or something. I mean, a lot of these have already had some success in whatever platform they were in or on, and so that they're funny people, and so I really always look at them as, but they're getting comfortable with the seasoned cast members.
Right.
Just hearing behind the scenes a little bit, sometimes it can be really competitive to get the writers to write for you, and getting that relationship going and working with people. A lot, I always notice when a new cast member is doing a character that they've been doing for a while, like, and this is that's their character's debut on SNL, and I'm like, okay, that's what got them hired. And so you see that spark every time, but will they fit in with everyone else? Will they be able to stick it out? Not everyone becomes like the best of all time, a huge star, but usually I'm ready to see what's new, and if you didn't give the new ones a chance, you'd never have the greats that we saw over time. Every one of them came in that way, and many of them as a featured player for a season or two, and a lot of those went on to be some of the best ever. So I'm always hopeful.
Yeah, me too. No, the possibilities are endless. I'd like to see if the new people do well, like on Weekend Update. Yeah, you're right about the characters that they may have brought to the show with them. If they hire a stand-up and they get on Weekend Update, maybe they'll throw out like a bit that they've done on stage and tailor it to Weekend Update. I know they hired one stand-up. This just I'm curious to see how he does on there. And maybe the new people will bond with a writer. Maybe they'll find a writer that gets their voice and everything. So that's a good segue to talking about a really great writer here on SNL, Bob Odenkirk. And Nicole, I'm from Albuquerque. You lived in Albuquerque for a long time. So he's someone who is super important to both of us, I think, because of the Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul Albuquerque connection. So he was nominated 6 times for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series, all of those with Better Call Saul. Never won, but how outstanding was he in both of these shows?
Loved him. I mean, the character is just so brilliant, and I remember being a Breaking Bad fan and watching it, and when that character was introduced, just thinking, oh my God, he's brilliant and just so funny. And that show was so interesting because it was so dark, but there were these really funny moments too. I mean, like true comedic moments. And so you saw Bob Odenkirk bringing that in on Breaking Bad, and then to have him become this amazing dramatic actor throughout, some of Breaking Bad, but then later in Better Call Saul was just, I mean, he's such a brilliant, talented actor. And so that was amazing. But no, I loved both of those. Love seeing, things around Albuquerque every time I would watch all those shows. But, and he was so good to the people of Albuquerque. Just like Bryan Cranston was, I know Bob Odenkirk would go to, I had some friends who performed at the local improv studio there, the Box, and he went and performed with them on more than one occasion. He did. There was always a surprise.
Yeah.
And I never got to see it. I think it might have been after I already had moved to Denver, but they would post later, hey, we had a surprise guest tonight. Bob Odenkirk came and joined us on stage. Happened more than once. I would have killed to see that. But he went and just went and hung out with the local improv guys and gals and and was just a really generous person, I think. And so sounds like a good guy in addition to being just such a great actor. And yeah, Albuquerque should love Bob Odenkirk for sure.
Yeah, I think they do. And gosh, the Albuquerque improv community does. It's just him trying to scratch that performance itch, that performing on stage itch, and helping some up and coming improv comedians and sketch comedians. That sounds super cool. I would have absolutely loved to see that too. And I know his voice was super important to Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, as far as I think that role as Saul Goodman, you need, I think it's ideal to have a comedic actor play that role. I mean, he's a good actor, but he gets comedy. He knows when to dial it back. He usually didn't play it up too much, even though there was inherent comedy. He knew how to play the comedy. So you could see Bob's kind of genius comedic mind work in even such a dark setting like those shows, Nicole.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing where he came from before that made it all the more interesting, I think. I know you'll segue us where we need to be here, but I knew him from Mr. Show before that. My husband Brian and I would watch Mr. Show with Bob and David Cross and Bob Odenkirk, and that was a hilarious sketch show from the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yep.
And so I really only knew him as a comedic guy. I don't know when I became aware that he had worked on SNL. I knew, and you'd see the name Bill Odenkirk on The Simpsons, another one of my favorite shows. And so you see these names out there. You're like, okay, you find out it's his brother, and so you start seeing these things, and it all kind of comes together, like where this guy came from and that background. But yeah, I think early on that was kind of my introduction to him was Mr. Show. So.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, just everything he's done since then, though, just amazing. And the films, even you might have seen the one that what was the movie he did with the punch face on the poster? I'm forgetting what it's called now.
Oh, it was a more recent one.
Yeah, more recent.
He kind of came like an action star, was it a superhero kind of movie?
Not super. I don't think it's called Nobody. Nobody was the name of the movie. It's good, and they're making a sequel to it too. So, just he's just really good in everything he's in.
Yeah, and when I didn't know, when I watched Mr. Show, I didn't know that he had written for SNL either. So I kind of was a fan of his separately from those two entities. And then when I found out, he actually wrote at SNL, he was behind some of this stuff. I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because Bob and David had that. Yeah, they had that clever, witty kind of sensibility to them, and a lot of that stuff bled over. You can see it in his SNL work. Sometimes it was a subtle, I'm not gonna rub the punchline right in your face. Maybe I will every now and then, but Bob's style was more let the writing sometimes speak for itself, even though we'll get to it. But he did write maybe a couple huge characters along the way. But I could see his sensibility there.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I'm trying to think of over time when you would learn who wrote for SNL, like Conan O'Brien. And I remember finding that out and people like that. And then it's so fun to kind of put that together and see oh my gosh, I can totally see them writing that or thinking that way. And yeah, it's pretty awesome because not every, we know, now you and I know a lot of writers from SNL. Not every one of them went on to be a really well-known actor or on-camera talent as well. So it's interesting because we've been able to see that in Bob Odenkirk as a performer too.
So he was credited after SNL on some things like The Ben Stiller Show. You had mentioned he wrote on Late Night with Conan O'Brien. He acted on The Larry Sanders Show, which was another HBO thing that I really loved. He was a writer on SNL, though, 1987 to 1991. He was also credited on some things that made it into the show after he left, but those were Bob Odenkirk's years. So that's primarily what we're looking at, late 80s to early 90s. So Nicole, we both got a chance to check out some old Bob Odenkirk material on SNL that he helped with. What kind of do you want to share that kind of pops out to you that he helped with or was behind?
Yeah. So you mentioned the years, and I thought it was interesting because I think he must have gotten some credits kind of post, like when they brought Matt Foley back, and which we'll talk about. But I'm thinking started watching SNL right around 91. So from those years you mentioned, I think he was already sort of leaving. Some of his team that he worked with, Robert Smigel and them, were still there, and I think he, like you said, he would come back a little bit and had some credits after that. But some of those main sketches that he wrote, I had not ever seen because that was not the era when I was watching SNL yet. 87 to 91, I was like 7 years old in 87, so wasn't allowed to watch it yet. So it was really fun to go back and see these characters he wrote for Tom Hanks as a really young man. And I had seen obviously older SNL sketches on reruns that they would play on Comedy Central, but some of these were just so funny. The Mr. Short-Term Memory that Tom Hanks played as a recurring character. I love what they wrote for Phil Hartman, I think, were some of my favorites that stood out too. But if you want to talk about any in particular, I mean, like it's fun to see those stars from the late 80s. And as Tom Hanks was becoming a huge star, and the stand-ups Tom Hanks was in the one called The Stand-Ups that they wrote, which I'm pretty sure was just making fun of Jerry Seinfeld and his style.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld type of comedians from that time period. But yeah, pretty much Jerry Seinfeld, like inflections. Yeah.
I mean, they're very, it's very like of the time comedy, I felt like, and this, what would have been probably somewhat groundbreaking at the time, pushing the envelope a little bit, but it's definitely mocking things in pop culture, in society at the time, and so a lot of it just so funny to watch. That these characters that and some actors from SNL that I loved, that are my favorites of all time, like I mentioned Phil Hartman or Dana Carvey, and seeing what he wrote for them was awesome.
Yeah, he worked really well, especially with Carvey, but all of that cast, he really worked well with them. There was one specific one that I'll call out. It was from season 14. It was with Matthew Broderick, John Lovitz, Dana Carvey, Kevin Nealon, Dennis Miller, almost the whole cast. It was called Nude Beach.
Come on, is this great or what, huh?
I don't know. I feel a little self-conscious, Bob. I mean, I've never been to a nude beach before.
Doug, come on. Will you stop with this? You have nothing to worry about. Everybody at this club just hangs out here. Everyone is here just to relax. That's what it's about.
Really?
Yeah. Come on. Believe me, in 5 minutes, you're going to completely forget about it. All right? Okay. I'm going to introduce you to some of the guys. Let's go.
Thanks.
All right. Come on. Hey, guys. Hey.
Hey, Bob. Hey, penis looks great today.
Well, thanks, Jack. Yours too.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, Ted, how's your penis?
Not bad.
And Nicole, this was, in my opinion, a very Mr. Show kind of sketch. Like Bob, he worked with other writers on this. He worked with Greg Daniels, Conan O'Brien, Robert Smigel. But I can feel Bob's sensibility. I can feel like that Mr. Show vibe in Nude Beach. Did you get a chance to go back and see this one?
I did. I loved it. Again, Kevin Nealon was one of my favorites back in the day. And when they, I don't know what your rating on your show is, when all they're doing is commenting on each other's, parts their whole time. And
Kevin Nealon's character set casually when they're at this nude beach. He sort of casually just says like, "Hey, penis looks great today."
Yeah, because that's the opening line. Yeah, they're on this nude beach, of course, behind this stand, so you can't see anything. They're just all shirtless, all these guys. And it's just every third comment then is just, "Oh yeah, we went on a vacation. Oh, here's a picture. Oh, your penis looks great in that picture."
I love it.
But then But then when it pans to Kevin Nealon and says, "Hi there, I'm Kevin Nealon with, and NBC, here at NBC, we want to make a statement." And this was supposed to be, that was very Mr. Show to me. That
Absolutely.
was very, just hilarious, the way they were just mocking the censors, you could really tell that maybe they did write that sketch and then someone said, "No, we're not, this is dumb." And they still let him do it, but it was all meant to be a little bit like just tongue in cheek, on the, just a little dig at NBC and some poking some fun at the hand that feeds them even. And so that was just great. But I totally see what you're saying about how that just sums up some of that type of humor that we would later see in Mr. Show.
Yeah, that direct-to-camera talk that Kevin gave at the end, I noted very Mr. Show. Even like the little... He's really good at... He and David and Mr. Show were really good at, and he and his writing partners here, Smigel and them, were good at taking like a slice of life kind of thing and making it kind of weird, like kind of taking the weird slices of life and highlighting them. So with this one, it was like the idea being that guys may fear going to a nude beach because people will be focusing in on their penis. That fear comes true here, but in a very nonchalant way. They don't make it scary. They just make it sort of like, this is just a matter of fact. This is just what we're talking about. Yeah. It's no big deal. It's just like talking about the weather or something like that. So I love that. It's like a very oddball twist on something that's kind of slice of life, but a little off-center.
Yeah, exactly. So silly in some ways, but also just very, very smart and really funny. And I'm sure kind of different for the time. You can it's a little bit dated now, but it's at the time, I bet that was just so different and unique to see on even late night TV like that. And then to have Matthew Broderick as the guest host that week doing it, he's just like the lead, just the most awkward kind of guy you could imagine having there too. So that was great. Loved it. Had never seen that one. Such a fun one to find.
Yeah. So that was go check that out. That was Nude Beach. That was season 14, episode 2. That was the Matthew Broderick episode. Bob Odenkirk wrote that with Gray Daniels, Conan O'Brien, and Robert Smigel. Just a wonderful piece from that era. Another one, Nicole, that I'll bring up and then we'll kind of volley. But another one with Dana Carvey that Odenkirk and Carvey kind of teamed up on. It seemed like together was Grumpy Old Man.
Today, everybody's spoiled rotten. When I was a boy, we didn't have these video games. We made up our own games, like chew the bark off the tree. You and your friends would find a nice oak tree and you start chewing the skin off of it. And there were no winners. Everybody was a loser. It rotted your teeth and left your intestines scarred and knotted. And that's the way it was, and we liked it. We loved it.
This debuted in a sketch in season 14, but started appearing on Weekend Update in season 15. So this is just like another little trope that they play so well. I could hear Odenkirk's voice in it, and Carvey brings it to life.
Absolutely. So there's a few that I would that we'll talk about that where you can almost see Bob Odenkirk playing the role as well, and it would be different if it was him. But yes, he definitely comes through, and this was definitely one. Grumpy Old Man, so funny. I actually replayed it for my kids because I'm introducing them to SNL.
What a good mom!
Just the one, yeah, right. We're very, very good parents. Just the ones that are not inappropriate for their age or anything like that. And just because I was about their age when I started being allowed to watch SNL, I was about 11 years old, and so we've been playing them. Some old ones from our favorite. They've definitely seen Matt Foley. But this one, the Grumpy Old Man, I had to play for them again because it's so funny. And I'm like, this is 30 years old. I can't believe it. This is so funny. I was cracking up at how good Dana Carvey was at emphasizing every new line in that. And just, this is, since you gave a description of the last one, this was Dana Carvey coming on Weekend Update, just talking about how everything used to be better in the old days and they liked it better, even though it all was worse in the way as he tells it. And it's just brilliant. And they're long. They're these long monologues. but they're so funny throughout. You wouldn't even think you could keep a character that funny for that long, but it was just brilliant.
Yeah, and one Odenkirky kind of thing that I noticed from these Grumpy Old Men update appearances was that how like the overt way that they would tell the audience what the character is.
I'm not happy. I don't like this chair, and I don't like this desk, and I don't like being here. I'm a grumpy old man. I don't like everything the way it is now compared to the way it used to be.
Just that simple, like it's such like a tongue-in-cheek, obvious thing. Yes. But he's like, here, we're serving up this character to you on a platter right here. But it was done in like a tongue-in-cheek way. Like they know that they're doing that in an overt way. But I just love that intro of the character.
I love that too. And I think where I picked up the clip, it cuts off maybe the introduction a little bit from Dennis Miller on Weekend Update at the time. But something that I know that as an adult, as I've gotten older, I realize a lot is, people in politicians or other people in real life will say things like, oh, it used to be better. It used to be better. And it becomes sort of this cliche that someone's always going to think that it was better when really we know that there were a lot of things that were not better. Whether you go back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, there were a lot of things that were not better for a lot of people. And so I thought to myself, wow, this is the late 80s and they're seeing it then. They were seeing it then, people saying in the world, in society, people saying, oh, it used to be better. And you're right. That's what he comes up and he goes, I'm old and it used to be this way and we liked it. And it was just, you're right. It was so simple. But with Dana Carvey and with this very simple, just these hilarious examples.
We didn't have these video games. We made up our own games like chew the bark off the tree.
I was dying. So good. Yeah.
Yeah, another one, I could hear Odenkirk's voice, I think, completely. If you know Odenkirk and his style, you can hear him come through in this.
Like I said, there's quite a few where I really felt like he could have played that role now that we know him as a performer too. And I can see that. And so when you get that sort of perfect connection between a writer who's writing to Dana Carvey's many strengths, but clearly that's a lot of Odenkirk in there too. And just brilliant.
Now, what's something that you could have seen him play?
Say that again?
What's something that you could have seen him play?
Well, I honestly, and we can talk about it, but I will tease ahead. How about? Because I know I want to talk about motivational speaker a lot. And because it is probably my favorite character of all time, Matt Foley. And I really think that Bob Odenkirk comes through in the character of Matt Foley as well. And so we can definitely talk about that. That came later though, which when Chris Farley joined the cast. If going through some of your other credits here, I have to say I loved the Carcinio show.
Yes.
Now, some of you at home might not understand some of this lingo, which earlier in the day our staff compiled from the streets. Now, when I said my guests were in my house, what I meant was in the studio.
Yes.
That is some weird, wild stuff. Now, according to this, your actual house is called a crib. But a baby crib is not necessarily called a house. I did not know that.
Not a house. Not a house, no sir.
Great discovery. I never had seen this one. Dana Carvey playing a amalgamation of Johnny Carson and Arsenio Hall, Carcinio, and Phil Hartman as the Ed McMahon. I was dying. I was absolutely dying because I do remember Arsenio Hall being a phenomenon.
Sure.
The the fist pump, and so seeing that with what I had seen Dana Carvey's Johnny Carson impression, I had just never seen this one with the Carcinio, the Arsenio Hall brought in, and I thought that was just hilarious. Loved that one.
It was such a perfect characterization of like Johnny Carson. He was trying to be more hip. to stay relevant. He saw that Arsenio was doing well, so hey, I'm gonna turn myself. I'm gonna model my show after Arsenio Hall. Carson's like making jokes about how white people dance and explaining the lingo that he's using to the audience. Just so many perfect beats in this. Like George Wendt comes on, pleading with Carson, "You don't have to do this, Johnny. Like you don't have to do this." So, oh man, yeah, he worked with Odenkirk worked with Dana Carvey and Robert Smigel on this, and it's just so clever. I love the premise of this. Nicole Carson didn't appreciate this, from what I know.
Really?
Yeah, he was a little offended by this characterization. I don't know if that he liked Dana's impression of him specifically, but I think it was the Carcinio one that maybe ticked him off the most. But I love it.
Yeah. Oh, I yeah, agreed. And it's fun because it is fun to see a reference to. I would say, like, one of the reasons I was so excited to do this topic, this episode on Bob Odenkirk, is even though I didn't start watching SNL till about 91, this general era of those performers and those writers was is still to this day like what I consider my favorite. My introduction to SNL and my favorite period of the show. And so I still love seeing all the 90s references, the late 80s, early 90s references in the show at that time, and being able to watch some of my favorite old cast members. And realizing these characters, were written by Bob Odenkirk was so fun. Like, Hans and Franz, like, didn't know he did that one. That was always one of my favorite. And that one very kind of Mr. Show-ish as well. In that one, just kind of getting that the buddies, Hans and Franz with Kevin Nealon and Dana Carvey. But that was always one of my favorite sketches, and didn't know he wrote that.
Yeah, he and of course Kevin Nealon and Dana helped write it. Robert Smigel, which is a theme. Like Bob Odenkirk and Robert Smigel worked really well together. They had similar sensibilities, and they wrought it together. Before we get to Matt Foley, because I'm excited to talk about that too, another iconic one, and probably a reason why I am a Chicago Bears fan, if I had to pinpoint it. One that he did with Robert Smigel was the Superfans.
As you're, I'm sure, aware, the Bears are getting ready for their big playoff against the New York Giants. The Bears are 7-point underdogs, but don't count them out. Now let's go around the room for some predictions. Pat?
The Bears, 62 to 3.
Okay, Todd?
Bears, 79 zip.
Oh, really? You don't think that the Giants will score?
No, I do not. The Bears' defense is like a wall. You can't go through them.
When you wrote so it's Bob Swirsky's Superfans. And I look at that and I'm like, what is that? And then right away I realize, oh, it's Da Bears. Okay.
I should have just written Da Bears.
I didn't know the name of the sketch. Yes, a great recurring sketch on the show over the years. Hilarious. They're all from Chicago, right? I mean, Bob Odenkirk was from Chicago.
Yeah, he moved to Chicago.
Moved there. Okay.
Yeah, Odenkirk had moved to Chicago. He was doing stuff in Second City. That's where he knew Farley and Smigel and Tim Meadows. He knew from Second City as well. With this one specifically, like Smigel actually came up with the idea and ran it by. Actually, Odenkirk, he's from Illinois. I think Naperville or something. So
outside the area, okay.
Yeah, but he moved to the big city, and then he met Smigel. Smigel actually came up with the idea for the Superfans, and then he ran it by Odenkirk. So I think Odenkirk would kind of like sprinkle in some ideas and help kind of formulate some stuff. Odenkirk is the one that came up with the hiss sound at the end of the Bears. Like he came up with that part of it specifically. Yeah, so he helped Smigel kind of like fine tune it. Essentially, and I could see Odenkirk actually playing one of these guys.
Absolutely. Put on the glasses and the mustache, like a pair of sunglasses, and I'm just picturing him there right now. I always loved that because I would watch that sketch and I never really knew who they all would. They'd have wigs and fake mustaches on, and I didn't really know right away who, who was playing. The characters in that. And so it was really fun always later to find out Mike Myers was usually in that sketch, right? I think
he was
Mike
the one that
Myers
was kind of hidden the most, like
Yeah.
underneath all that, all the makeup and prosthetics and stuff. Yeah.
Of course, yes. And then they like you just mentioned George Wendt. I think he came on and did some stuff with them on that. But it was really sometimes hard to figure out who were the Bears fans in that.
Smigel was one of them.
Okay, he was actually there.
Robert
for one.
Smigel,
Okay.
and then Chris Farley was one of them, and Joe Montana.
Yes.
I think they would rotate cast members,
And
or
then-
not. They rotate hosts sometimes, but that was kind of the core. Like Farley, Mike Myers, Robert Smigel seemed to be kind of the core. George Wendt, I think, was like a honorary sort of cast member when it came to that. So yeah, no, it was always interesting to see. Mike Myers was one of the ones that I'm like, I keep having to remind myself that he was like a core part of that.
Right. Yeah. Just again, these cast members that would from so many other things, but were so funny in some of these sketches that they were just kind of a part of, and yeah, I could absolutely see Bob Odenkirk doing that because that's what I'm picturing. I'm just picturing the sunglasses, the mustache, like completely. He would have fit in around that table too. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. So, that was, again, one of those great recurring ones over time. He had so many one-offs that he obviously wrote that we looked at. We mentioned those funny Tom Hanks ones. Very funny to see a young Tom Hanks doing these kind of, not actually my favorite ones that on SNL of all time, but just funny to see Tom Hanks as this Mr. Short Memory.
Yeah, there was one specifically where he was on a game show that really made me laugh.
Yes.
They call it Game Beaters.
It's silly. It's Tom Hanks kind of, as a comedian back then, which was what kind of he was. I mean, he did a lot of comedy back then. I think it's hard to look past him sometimes, just being kind of young, silly Tom Hanks. But it was fun. It was really, again, just these great ideas and premises that they came up with that were really brilliant. And you had on here the love toilet. I actually remembered that. So that one I remembered from my youth, like probably the first season I ever watched SNL. So in this, I want to say probably around 92. This was the 17th season. It said they had the love toilet. This was one of their fake commercials.
Yeah.
And they and so this was around the time when they would have like the interludes from Jack Handey, the Deep Thoughts with Jack Handey, so they'd have these interludes once in a while in SNL, and the love toilet. So this like fake commercial comes on, and you see these. I still remember that it was just these two people staring lovingly into each other's eyes, and then the camera just slowly pans out to reveal they're on this two-sided toilet. So it was a double toilet where they can,
they're like looking at each other. So they're not only like sitting next to each other, but they're almost sitting like it's like at a booth at a coffee shop.
Yes.
In a way. And then they're able to look into each other's eyes and hold hands.
It's so silly. It's like one of those Valentine's Day, like diamond ring commercials,
right.
the tone of it. And I did not even rewatch this to tape this, to record this today. I just remember this because as a 12-year-old watching SNL for the first time, I just thought that was so funny. I couldn't believe, it was one of those things that just literally is just tattooed in my memory.
Yeah. I think it's Kevin Nealon and Victoria Jackson.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Just hilarious. Like you point out, like it's taking this thing like that was very well known at the time, these like a diamond is forever commercials that we would have on, and it's you never have to be apart, the love toilet. So they just, again, you can just see this like silly but just spot on taking on like just targeting something that's just kind of silly in the social conscious at the time, and just mocking it. And it was I always loved that one.
Yeah, classic fake ad from that era. Al Franken would be upset if we didn't also give him co-credit for that. So Bob Odenkirk and Al Franken kind of seems like worked on that together.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes. But But do you want to talk about motivational speaker?
I do. Yes, one that we mentioned. Bob helped other writers out with some certain things and whatnot, but this is a Bob creation, so I'm excited to talk about this one. You said it was like possibly your favorite character
Of all, I mean, if I had to, it'd be hard to really come up with the best SNL characters of all time. But this is one of my favorites. Chris Farley as Matt Foley, a motivational speaker. Just like crying, laughing, even to this day when I watch that sketch, or the few treatments they did on it.
Yeah,
but
I think that first sketch, though,
still my favorite. Yeah.
Now, as your father probably told you, my name is Matt Foley, and I am a motivational speaker. Now, let's get started by letting me give you a little bit of a scenario of what my life is all about. First off, I am 35 years old, I am divorced, and I live in a van down by the river.
Okay, but something I did discover in prepping for this, because we talked about, okay, we're going to do Bob Odenkirk. I knew he had written that one. I did not know the origins of it at Second City, and that you can find a clip online of that being performed at Second City with Bob Odenkirk playing the dad. That Phil Hartman took over for it's a very grainy copy that someone shot in the theater, but you can see it's the same exact, almost word for word sketch. Tim Meadows at the Second City is the son that David Spade would later play in a premiere on SNL, and then two females who I was not as familiar with were playing the mom and the daughter. And then Bob Odenkirk plays the dad. And so he introduces, hey guys, we found, I think the premise is they found pot. They found one of the kids was smoking marijuana. And we thought we'd bring in a motivational speaker to talk to you. And so they bring in Matt Foley, Chris Farley as Matt Foley. And the rest is history, right?
Yeah, just unreal. Like, it takes a performer, like a bull in a china shop kind of performer like Chris to bring it to life. But this was like from the mind of Bob Odenkirk. Like, this is his baby. He said that the character was inspired initially by Chris Farley's presence at Second City, a voice that Farley did in another sketch. I think he was playing like a football coach or something. And Bob's like, that's amazing. I love how he does that. And then Bob said he started thinking about his days, I think it was in Naperville, where these hippies would like hang out by the river. And then he came across some Tim Robbins motivational things. So he kind of started putting that together, said he was alone in his apartment, just kind of writing away, and sort of came up with like a hybrid of like motivational speaker. He's like, wouldn't it be funny if the motivational speaker was actually like a screw up in his own life? So he's basically telling the kids, don't be like me. So that's like the whole thing. So that's where like the river, like the van down by the river, it came from those hippies by the river that he noticed.
That's so funny.
Like brilliant, Nicole.
I can totally see Bob Odenkirk playing the character. It would not have the physicality that Chris Farley brought to it. It would be different. But I think through the writing, you hear Bob Odenkirk's voice in there, and that's where I can really picture Bob Odenkirk in like a bad lounge suit, you get the picture in your mind. Bob Odenkirk, a younger Bob Odenkirk, in that kind of bad suit, and comes in, is like, hey guys, I just want to talk to you about a little about my life. And you
thrice divorced.
Yeah. I am thrice divorced. And you can just absolutely see Bob Odenkirk playing that character. Again, it would be different because Chris Farley brought that bull in the china shop aspect to it, of the physicality, the presence that he would. I mean, obviously he just struck this presence at any sketch he was in, and had that funny thing with the pulling up the pants that he brought to that was so funny, and just so these additional aspects of the character just constantly pushing up his glasses, being like over caffeinated,
Yeah.
and just like super on edge. But like just the main, when you just kind of listen to the script and hear it, I totally see Bob Odenkirk in that.
Yeah, I can hear the dark undertones.
Yeah.
And that's Odenkirk's voice, like amidst or underneath all the wild, like Chris Farley running in place and jumping through the table in the first iteration of it. There's a lot of darkness in that Matt Foley character. Like it ends with him saying that he wants to like get his stuff and go live with them, essentially. And then they're frightened, they're terrified of that possibility. But I can see Odenkirk playing up that kind of dark. It does remind me like maybe of a more caffeinated Saul Goodman in some ways. Saul Goodman's just like this, like you'd mentioned, like a lounge suitor, just like the way he dresses and the kind of a down on his luck, losery kind of vibe. Like total Bob. That's Odenkirk's wheelhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was just like you said, if just his own creation. I read that that was the most fun he ever had in his entire career, was doing that sketch with Chris Farley, which is like touching, and loved hearing that and seeing that. But yeah, wow. Like you said, I think all of them are funny. They did one in Spanish,
Yes, yeah, I like that. I do like that one.
But so they're all funny. But the original one, it's just maybe Bob Odenkirk's like best lasting mark on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I agree. That was a couple seasons after Odenkirk left the show. But I mean, we got to credit him because that's his baby. And like you said, that was the most. You said that was the most fun.
Did they not overlap there? He and Chris Farley.
They did. I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, because he ended in 91, so I think they overlapped for Farley's first season.
Okay, and then he left, but then they brought wow. So, I'm so glad. I mean, what might have been if we had lost that?
Oh, I know. And Odenkirk loved Farley, and I can tell when he talks about him, he almost has like this brotherly sort of ownership of Farley. Like he's one of the few who says who doesn't like the Chippendale sketch. Like I've heard Odenkirk say that he doesn't really, because he thinks that people are laughing at Farley. Whereas probably I think I heard Spade and some other people say, well, I disagree with that. We're laughing with him. But Odenkirk, you could tell it's almost like he feels like this big brother sort of vibe with Chris Farley. Protectiveness, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. And I do think that, Chris Farley knew what he was doing and knew what, I mean, even with Chippendales, like, yes, there's a lot of funny, body just mocking, two different body types on the stage, but there's also some really like intelligent humor there.
Yeah.
and I think Chris Farley always knew what he was doing and was brilliant, of course, but I could see that absolutely with a lot of the comedians that talk about him, just being protective and knowing that he had his own struggles too. But wow, what a gift to have the two of those minds come together.
Yeah.
Odenkirk and Chris Farley for that amazing character.
Yeah, amazing. I'm so grateful to Odenkirk for that. And one other thing, I don't know if you have one other thing, but I have one more thing, one more sketch that I want to mention too. It's one of my favorites from that era, actually. It's from season 16. He worked with Conan O'Brien and Robert Smigel on the McLaughlin Group.
Issue number 6. What did you have for breakfast today, Eleanor?
Some cantaloupe.
Morton Town, USA.
I had poached eggs and toast.
Jamundo.
Bacon and eggs.
Patty Buke Buke.
I'm thinking waffles, maybe
Wrong.
a little.
You all had Special K with banana. Issue number 7. What is issue 14 going to be? Some say it will deal with an economic matter. Others believe it will involve Germany. More teeny tiny tabletop.
Oh, acid rain?
Wrong! Eleanor, gee, I think you're swelling on.
I have
Wrong!
no idea.
You know quite well.
That was the one, Dana Carvey, and I'll say the initial one. That's with John Goodman, Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks, and Kevin Nealon. And he's parodying John McLaughlin, who had this crazy, and then the real show's crazy. Like the parody is so like a wonderful fast pace kind of thing, but the real show's kind of crazy too. So it's not too far off. But this was just such like great writing, a lot of like good escalation in this. So it makes sense to me that you see Conan, Robert Smigel, Bob Odenkirk, like this has their stamp on it too.
I do remember that. That's actually one I do remember from watching back when once I was already watching SNL and was not, aware of being 11, 12 years old of that show in the real world. But knowing this was, they were so good at mocking, the presidential race that year in '92 and so much of that political humor that Bob Odenkirk was so intelligent. And I read as we were preparing for this, I read that he in a fairly recent interview said that he thought he was too young at 25 to start working on SNL.
Oh wow!
And he was 25, I guess. And I mean, to me, it's like there's just genius there. Like he clearly had an understanding of politics at the time and just these issues that were in society. And so to think that he was 25 years old and coming up with this content, again, like with the McLaughlin Group, just speaks to, I think, how brilliant he was.
Yeah, right.
In an interview, I guess he said he thought he was too young, was probably kind of a little bit arrogant at times, and just wishes he had, just been a little more mature. But at the same time, he said he learned so much and was with the greats, and yeah.
Yeah, I think I've read or heard where he said he was a little combative with Lorne, and he probably regrets that a little bit. And I think he acknowledges his own kind of ego as a young guy and everything. But he's so in tune with politics and in tune with like shows like the McLaughlin Group. I think in your role, have you hosted like one of these panel kind of shows ever?
Yeah, I've done a few things, iterations of that over the years, where you sit in a foursome maybe and you chat about issues and. It's I will say, and it's hard. It's amazing that they can get groups together to do this successfully, whether it's like the McLaughlin Group or The View, because it does depend so much on the personalities that you have sitting there, and what, not just the topics, but also just who's going to have the most to say about this today versus this topic another day. Yeah. And how do you not talk all over each other at once? And just, these shows are kind of there's definitely an art to them. And I don't know how some of them do it so successfully. But yeah, the ones that do, bravo, good for them. And they always have given us great SNL sketches over the years, because that's just a classic SNL trope, is to go, do a talk show, right? And and whether you're mocking The View or if it's, just some funny character hosting their own show, or doing the McLaughlin Group, or doing Phil Donahue. I guess I saw Bob Odenkirk had a hand in writing Phil Hartman's Phil Donahue, and those kind of things. That those are just always some of my favorite SNL sketches, is when they do just the classic simple talk show.
Yeah, and there's so much good escalation in this one too, playing off of Dana Carvey's kind of wild interpretation of McLaughlin. And I can just see Conan and Robert Smigel and Odenkirk just like sitting there, just probably spitballing, like, where should we take it next? What specifically about the questions that he would ask. So they would get more and more ridiculous. It'd be like, is there an afterlife? And then intelligent beings on other planets, yes or no? And one of them was, what number am I thinking of? And then they had to go around the panel, or what did you have for breakfast today? So I could just imagine Odenkirk and the other two sitting in there just being like, what questions should he ask? Like, where can we take this? So it's just so fun.
It is. It's so fun to imagine the writers in the writers' room sometimes coming up with these sketches when they are just throwing ideas around. I like to do, you and I, we're huge SNL nerds, like total nerds about this. And I like it when I notice a sketch that I'm like, I bet this was like a sketch and it started out this way, but then someone kind of improvised something and it just went this totally different direction, and this is what it ended up as. And those are some of my favorite sketches. And I'm just guessing at this, and but I just love imagining kind of how this came together. And so some of these, you're right, where you can just picture these guys sitting on a couch. There's nothing glamorous about it at all. They're just like these all, barely out of college kind of guys in their 20s, just making each other laugh and coming up with the next heighten it, next funniest thing. And you can just imagine how fun that was. And yeah. So
being an SNL writer kind of seems like on paper like would be my dream job. I know it's stressful. It sounds incredibly stressful, the long nights, everything like that. But just being able to bounce funny ideas off people. The only person in the world who gets to hear my sketch ideas is my wife. And I don't know how much she always appreciates that. I'm like, I thought of this premise for a sketch, and do you think this would work? So I bounce sketch ideas off of my wife. But yeah, it would be so much fun to bounce sketch ideas. Have you ever come up with like premises for sketches when you're not like working for a sketch group, but just in your everyday life?
Yeah, I have, we definitely, my husband too, Brian, like he's funny. We participated in some improv classes in Albuquerque too, and things like that. And yeah, it's fun. I think it's hard. I honestly, I do think it's really hard. And I've tried to write out like a full sketch, and that I wouldn't say I've ever done it successfully. You might have a funny idea, but to put it on paper and to then to actually craft it where this is going to get funnier and funnier and funnier, and build to that, like that moment where, okay, and now it resolves. Like that's just such an art form, writing sketch comedy. And so I've never done it successfully. And I know that it's so much more than just this funny premise, that you have to write it in a way that builds and that unfolds in just this perfect way. So I have all the admiration in the world.
Odenkirk seemed to be, I know he had said that there might be some stuff that he would do differently on the show, and he was a little young and everything, but it seemed like he worked well with certain people like Conan O'Brien, Robert Smigel, Farley, Dana Carvey. We saw him work well, obviously, with David Cross after SNL. So yeah, it seems like Bob's just, I think I'm grateful to have Bob's comedic mind kind of shine through, especially over the years. People are kind of rediscovering his work, and he's had a renaissance, Nicole. So I'm grateful to have somebody like Bob.
I know, right? I mean, what a career! What an absolutely amazing career to start so young, to have these, to be involved in the iconic SNL and some of those iconic years of SNL, to then go on to have this hilarious sketch show of his own in Mr. Show, and then to be one of the great dramatic actors in recent years in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and just an unbelievable talent there. And start, so just really fun to see that. And yeah, he's one of a kind for sure. I have a book recommendation. Since we've been talking about writers, I read this cute book. I don't know if Melinda would like. It's kind of a girly book, but it's called Romantic Comedy, and it's about a female who writes on what's basically an SNL show.
Oh.
And then she has, a story of her own. But it's very fun. It kind of gives you that like window into what that might look like working as a writer at one of these late night sketch shows. And just the relationships. Obviously it's a fictional book, but just kind of a fun window into that. And so as we're talking about SNL writers, that was a fun book I read. But again, yeah, kind of a girl's book.
It's all right. It's all right. I watched so many Hallmark movies with my wife. I'm kind of used to that by now. I'll definitely check that out. So as far as like specifically SNL and concerning maybe the Hall of Fame and Odenkirk's legacy, like what should voters and SNL fans factor in about Bob Odenkirk when discussing like his place in SNL history?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that a lot of the writers we know from SNL who transitioned into on-camera talent at SNL as well, like a Tina Fey, and some of them, are a little more well-known as sort of like what you think a lot of those writers aspire to be, I guess, which is on camera, right? I mean, you think sometimes some of them, that's where they really want to be. And I think it's really cool that Bob Odenkirk, his years at SNL, he really, besides some little cameo or small appearances that all the writers have at some point, he really didn't act on the show. And so we wouldn't discover that aspect of him for years to come after that. So just as a writer, I think it's just he's just one of these great. There's a lot of people who are probably still surprised to find out that he was ever a writer for SNL. They'll know these sketches and will have no idea he was involved in them. So he really is. He has such a unique career there, being this sort of extremely famous person who was just a hidden figure there, almost in a way. At the time, no one would have really known who was behind these sketches and the writers behind them at the time. So as far, it's hard to put him on the list because he's so famous now. But the work that we're talking about was during a time when he was really just beginning. And I don't know. Because it's interesting because so many people on SNL, they come into their own while they're on SNL, and that's what launches them to stardom. And with Bob Odenkirk, it was, in some cases decades before some people would discover him on Breaking Bad, for example.
And he gave us Matt Foley, darn it.
Yeah, he did. So, I mean, that right there, he just, ranks right up at the top.
So there's that. Really great discussion there with Nicole Brady and our friend Thomas Senna. Well, Nicole Brady's our friend too, but you get my drift. Listen, I want to keep this wagon wheel rolling, and I want to get right to the sketch because Thomas mentioned it in the tail end of the conversation when he said, hey, this guy gave us Matt Foley. So why don't we revisit a Matt Foley sketch right now, the original Matt Foley sketch. It features Christina Applegate as the host, and David Spade is in this one. Of course, Chris Farley portraying the titular Matt Foley, and all the rest. There is some physical comedy in this that you're going to miss, but I think you're going to get the gist of this. And if this doesn't seal the deal for you, I don't know what will. This is Bob Odenkirk, having written Matt Foley in a van down by the river.
Hey, Mom, Dad.
Brian, Stacy, your mother Ellen and I are so glad you decided to join us for this family communications session.
So, what's up? You guys getting divorced or something?
No, we just wanted the family to talk as a group.
Okay, well, let's get it started then.
All right, well, Stacy, Brian, your father, Ted, and I are a little bit concerned. Celia, the cleaning lady, was in the family room and she found a bag of pot.
She didn't smoke it, did she?
No, she didn't smoke it.
Now, we're not here to come down on you. I mean, that's not what we're about, okay?
We're just concerned that pot could lead to other things.
Crack, ice, boom, pow.
But we know you don't want to hear this from us.
Sure, I mean, we're your parents. Who wants to hear this stuff from their parents, huh?
But your father and I came up with a brilliant idea to give you kids some direction. A motivational speaker.
Yeah, one of those guys who speaks to big groups at high schools and churches.
You mean to come to the house?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right, later.
Thanks, anyway.
Hey, come on, you guys. This set me back a few bucks. Okay, his name is Matt Foley. Now, he's been down in the basement drinking coffee for about the last 4 hours, and he should be all ready to go. I'll call him up. Matt, we're ready for you. His speech is called Go For It. Now, he's used to big groups, so make him feel like there's a crowd here. Matt, come on up, buddy!
All right, how's everybody? Good. Now, as your father probably told you, my name is Matt Foley, and I am a motivational speaker. Now let's get started by letting me give you a little bit of a scenario of what my life is all about. First off, I am 35 years old, I am divorced, and I live in a van down by the river. Now you kids are probably saying to yourselves, hey, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna get the world by the tail and wrap it around and pull it down and put it in my pocket. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're probably gonna find out as you go out there that you're not going to amount to jack squat. You're gonna end up eating a steady diet of government cheese and living in a van down by the river. Now, young man, what do you want to do with your life?
Actually, Matt, I kind of want to be a writer.
Well, la-di-frickin-da! We got ourselves a writer here. Hey, Dad, I can't see real good. Is that Bill Shakespeare over there? Huh?
Well, actually, Matt, Ellen and I have encouraged Brian in his writing.
Dad, I wish you could just shut your big yapper. Now, I wonder, Brian, from what I've heard, you're using your paper not for writing, but for rolling doobies. You're gonna be doing a lot of doobie rolling when you're living in a van down by the river. Young lady, what do you want to do with your life?
I want to live in a van down by the river.
Well, you'll have plenty of time to live in a van down by the river when you're living in a van down by the river. Now, you kids are probably asking yourselves, hey, Matt, how can we get back on the right track? Well, as I see it, there is only one solution. And that is for me to get my gear, move it on in here, because I'm going to bunk with you, buddy. We're going to be buddies. We're going to be pals. We're going to wrestle around. Old Matt's going to be your shadow. Here's you, here's Matt. There's you, there. Whoops-a-daisy. Whoops-a-daisy. By God. We're going to have to clean that up later. Me and my buddies, my pals, my amigos. I'm going to get my gear.
Wait, yeah, Matt, you don't have to go.
No,
Matt,
you don't have to do that. We'll never smoke pot again.
Matt, thanks for all you've done.
I don't give a rat's behind because I'm moving in. I'm sick and tired of living in a van down by the river.
Is the back door locked?
Yes. We love you, Dad.
I love you too.
That is a stone cold classic. And I really am curious if we're going to see any homage like we did in season 40 for the 50th season event in February. So that's very exciting. Listen, we've got a brand new show on the SNL Hall of Fame feed, and that is the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler. It features Joe and Shari along with myself, and we take a look back at the episode from the week. And we also briefly discuss the episode that was just on. So there's that. I want to thank Nicole Brady from the bottom of my heart. It was lovely to have her back. Of course, I want to thank our friends Thomas and Matt and Doug Donatz. We've got a huge crew here to make this happen, and we're thrilled to do it week over week. Next week on the show, we welcome back Saturday Night Network's own superstar, Bill Kenny. And he is going to be here to talk about four-time host Danny DeVito. So that should be real good. tune in for that one for sure. And with that, that's what I've got for you. So do me a favor, and as you're walking past the Weekend Update exhibit, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNLHOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.